The following Conscious Consumer Network recording of a live broadcast is available to purchase in high definition at ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a CCN pledger. For €10 a month, you can have unlimited access to CCN high definition downloads at ethymarket.com. Ethymarket, the ethical marketplace for conscious consumers. Each life we incarnate into has a divine purpose. For the majority of people on this planet, their purpose has eluded them. We have become so distracted with the struggle to survive that we have forgotten what we are here to do. In alignment with the sacred laws of nature, the ultimate purpose of all existence is to create and evolve. We certainly do not incarnate into life with the intention to destroy. And yet, we have come to live in a very destructive world. As a result, there are many out there who feel lost or adrift, whilst knowing deep down inside that something is very wrong with their reality. Many people wish they could do something of value, anything that is purposeful, instead of having to submit to a system of slavery in order to survive. It is important never to let go of that feeling. That is your soul crying out to you, telling you that your life has value and that you do indeed have a purpose. The most important thing you can do in life is to recognize your purpose, and often that requires a lot of soul searching. Life indeed dishes out some pretty tough challenges, which will either move you closer towards your purpose path, or will give you great training for when you finally realize what it is that you came here to do. But more often than not, the very clues about your life's purpose are hidden in plain sight, woven into the very fabric of our existence. But we are so easily distracted by irrelevant details that don't really matter, that often we miss the very obvious right in front of us. It is because of our willful ignorance of anything that does not fit our preconceived ideas that the truth about the nature of our reality is so readily hidden in plain sight. This is a very deep and personal journey, which has come to be expressed in many aspects throughout my life. This is not just an attempt to retell a bunch of research and pass it off as my own, for I am very grateful and openly acknowledge all the many wonderful people that I have been given the opportunity to work with and to learn from in order to get to the point where I've come to know what I now know. This is a journey I was always destined to go on, and likewise, how I have come to know this information forms as much a part of the story as the information itself. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's edition of Dragonology. My name is Melvi, and this is episode 9 of Dragonology. It is the 21st of May, 2015, 9 p.m. in London and Morocco, 10 p.m. here in Central Europe and in my home country of South Africa, 4 p.m. in New York, and of course the next morning in Sydney at 6 a.m. over there. Welcome to everybody who's tuned in, and thank you for doing so. Hopefully tonight will be interesting. We kick it up again tonight as we go in depth into some of the dragon and serpentine etymology that we've been kind of focusing on over the course of the previous 8 episodes of Dragonology. And we recap on some of the stuff that we've done before, that we've built up. And you'll see a lot of tying in together of themes that come about. We've touched a little bit on everything you'll see presented tonight, but in order to sort of, I suppose, bring it all together and show you kind of where we're going with this, it's been necessary to teach little segments throughout each episode to build up to an overall picture. There's been a lot of wonderful students who've tuned into the Dragonology episodes and who've been corresponding with me, and one of the most common questions that I get asked is, where is this all leading? And, it's pretty difficult to say because I myself am only on a journey of discovery. And as I discover things, so I can teach to others. And I suppose that's part of how my journey really here is structured. It's kind of about experience, absorb, interpret, and then communicate back. But as to say as to where there's an ultimate definite final point proving some ultimate definite final truth, well, I wouldn't be so bold as to say that that's exactly where I'm going or that's exactly what I'm doing. But there has to sort of be a coalescence, a coming together, a convergence, if you will, of what we're trying to teach, because it covers such a broad spectrum of themes and interpretations, language and symbolism, that it's kind of necessary to really bring it to a point and show you actually what it's all pointing to and what all this underlying, thematic symbology represents. And we're going to be looking into that this evening. So, as always, just to start this, to make it all-encompassing, because we try to make each episode all-encompassing, although it's good if you go back and you watch all previous 8 episodes of Dragonology, which are available. To start off this evening, we're going to look at the word etymology, which comes from the Greek root etymos, meaning true. So in order to understand the truth of the nature of our reality, we need to look at the words and the language that we use. The science of the study of words is called philology. But if you actually get into looking at the roots within words, because various words, particularly in the English language, have evolved and incarnated from other root words. And when you actually start to look at the root of various words, it is the etymological study of these words. So, as I said, the word etymology really comes from the Greek root, which means etymos, referring to true, that which is true. So in order for us to understand the nature of our language and what it's really referencing, we need to look at the etymology. So, beg your pardon, I've got something bothering me here and I have to just move it out of the way, otherwise it's going to bother me the whole episode. Referencing truth. We've dealt with this picture before, and it's very interesting that it turns up on the building of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., and it is Olin Warner bronze of truth. This is what would be a personification of truth. And for me, I've always found this to be so incredibly interesting that you find truth holding up a mirror, but also holding a serpent. And that's very telling. So why do we deconstruct language? Language is like an encryption key. Initiation permits one access to knowledge at a security clearance level. Understanding words is a means of bypassing the guard and stealing the security key. And this is from a quote from Pierre Sabak, who wrote one of my favorite books, The Murder of Reality, which I highly recommend you read. He's been a tremendous resource in terms of getting to understand dragon and serpentine etymology. So we're going to start at the very beginning. And Genesis 1, verse 1, chapter 1, verse 1, you couldn't get more beginning than that. And it says, in the beginning, God created. Now we're just going to focus on that for a minute. So we're going right back to the beginning here. And so many times I keep saying that everything ties back into the origin, the creational myth, the Garden of Eden story. And we're really going to dissect that quite finely tonight. So again, we're looking at the beginnings, okay? God created. In the beginning, God created. All right. So Genesis, that is Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, Genesis. Let's look at the origin of Genesis. Now, Jinn, D-J-E-N, or Jinn, refers to a class of angel or demon. And this is an Arabic root of a word, but the DJ actually in the Egyptian hieroglyphics comes in the sign of a resting cobra and references Egyptian royalty or the dragon bloodline more specifically. But it obviously has transliterated over time from that spelling into this spelling, and this is a common spelling, and you often find this spelling of the jinn referenced in the Quran. But what you have are several roots which have come out of this jinn root, and the jinn has become the root of Genesis. Now, I purport that the cis part of Genesis actually refers to Isis, and I shall go into that in another Dragonology episode. But for now, we're looking at the jinn part of Genesis, which the transliteration of it obviously is D-Jinn, it's Jinn or Jinn, and obviously the G-N, and the spirit, Jinn, which would be G-I-N. Okay. So, Jinn. These are two Arabic depictions of various jinn that I found, and this is actually Ali killing the jinn. Interestingly enough, notice the fire aureola around the head. A halo or an aureola is a glowing light. In Arabic artwork, that's normally depicted. The halo is normally depicted looking a bit like fire. In Christian art, it looks a bit more like sun rays or glow. And over here, you've got to notice the interesting depictions, which normally have horns and kind of ogre, animalish. A lot of elephants come up in jinn depictions as well. I've seen winged elephants, which are quite interestingly also jinn depictions. And then, of course, the jinn evolved into what became the genie. And there's a lot of very interesting, notable allegorical associations that come with the genie that are worth pausing on and pondering for a moment. For example, normally you'll find with the genie things like clouds, puffs of smoke, vapor, spiritual ether. They kind of incarnate out of seemingly nowhere. What else is very common with the genie? The ability to change shape. We've seen that in the various incarnations that the Disney version of Aladdin took. The genie there took many, many, many different shapes. And the great thing about it being voiced by someone like Robin Williams was the fact that he could be so versatile and obviously play all those different characters that the genie metamorphosed into. So these are all very symptomatic or thematic of the genie, but also thematic of the dragon. These abilities to appear and disappear out of seemingly nowhere, smoke, spirit. Again, here you've got a lot of, you see around here, are these sort of like fumes or vapor. The word vapor is cognizant with the word viper. So we've dealt with the word cloud coming from the collar root. So very interesting to notice these themes coming up with the genie, which again, the genie originated from the word jinn. And for me, one of the most telling themes that's inextricably linked with the genie, of course, is the light and the lamp. The genie came out of a magic lamp, and I'll go back again just so that you can have a look. You can see it coming out here of a lamp and here as well, out of some kind of burning oil lamp, perhaps. But this is the one that was kind of commonly associated with the genie. Supposedly, if you rub the lamp, the genie would come out and give you 3 wishes, which that whole 3 wishes thing is very much tied into the idea of the Faustian Pact. The whole idea that you can sell your soul for riches, fame, fortune. So that theme ties in very nicely with the whole concept of the genie, and it's very, very common when it comes to talking about dragons is this deal with the devil, Faustian Pact kind of idea, which, by the way, is a very real concept. So the light and the lamp, inextricably linked with dragons, and are symbolic representations of, and I wanted to just go through these. Light, obviously, from the lamp, but the word lit comes from the word light, the L-I-T, and that comes up again in the word literature, and literature is cognizant with the word enlightenment. Obviously, you learn through reading literature, you become enlightened. Illumination, which you can illuminate something by putting on a lamp or a light. Electricity, which has the word El in it, which is obviously the Hebrew interpretation of light, Elul, which means light. And of course, Illuminati. Most people, of course, know what the Illuminati represent. The illuminated ones, those who kept the knowledge of illumination in a tiny secret society out of public circulation. Those people known as supposedly the Illuminati or the illuminated ones. And the dragon is erroneously associated with sun symbolism. Sun, obviously, light. The halo, which is representative of the sun, the light behind the head, and the aureola, which would be a halo, but obviously surrounding the entire body. So all these aspects of light, cognizant with the dragon, and of course the lamp and the light turns up in the story of the genie. Now notice this particular depiction of the genie with a serpent-like tail. Interesting that. So again, looking at the various etymological stems of the word that came from jinn, Genesis, as we've covered, gene, which is our genetics. Generate, you talk about the active and passive generative principles of creation. So generate, generation. And of course, we spoke about green last week, because green, the root word of plant is rooted in the dragon root triad of pala, para, and pio, which we'll deal with a little bit when we get onto some further plant allegory. But the word green is rooted in the word jinn. Okay, and that obviously has evolved over time as well. The various aspects of jinn being the transliteration of the spellings. The DJ went to the J, which went to the G, and that can also be a G-E-N, and gene root, which is the root of Genesis, and the root of green. And for me, this word is, wow, one of the most telling origin. Anybody who comes from my hometown of Durban will know exactly what this references. The number 330 as well has major occult significance. Anybody from my hometown knows exactly what I'm referencing. So, this over here, the word origin, is interesting because the meaning as well as the etymology, okay? You're talking about the genesis, the where we were, the generation of us, the origin of us, which is the or root, and the jin root, which we've just spoke about. And that's 2 dragon root words. Extremely significant that it comes up in the word origin. Origin is, for me, one of the most interesting words that we use very flippantly, very commonly, and says a hell of a lot. So we're dealing with Genesis today. We've gone to the beginning, the origins. Look at all the theming we've got tying in together. So again, just talking about those dragon root words and how they transliterate. The or, the most common dragon root word, often, sometimes the U will come in between the O and the R, as in, like, for example, the Ouroboros is spelled with the O-U, or court is spelled with the O-U-R, and the A-R, as in art, or archer, art. And then, of course, there is the phi, which comes on the end of the or, which makes the orf root, or ophi root, which you find the phi in between the O and an I, or an O and an E, or any transliteration after the OPH. So the OPH then transliterates with various vowel sounds afterwards. It can even sometimes be O or U. An example of the ophi root would be, for example, the 13th hidden symbol of the zodiac, which is Ophiuchus, and this references the serpent bearer. The word ophi is often actually means serpent. For example, we'll get into some various ones now, but in this instance, Ophiuchus, representing the 13th hidden symbol of the zodiac, which is the serpent bearer. Now here we go, Ophion. I haven't dealt with Ophion before, but Ophion, obviously, we've spoken about how the 3 things that are inextricably linked: the gods, rulers being royalty, or the governments of the planet, presidents, rulers, royalty, and dragons. They're usually, all 3 are the same thing. Controversial, I know, but we have proven this over and over again through the course of dragonology. So this is the god Ophion. In some versions of Greek mythology, Ophion is the person that came first, the primordial god who ruled the world with Eurynomy before the 2 of them were cast down by Kronos and Rhea. Now, Kronos and Rhea were the Titans. Okay. Now, I want to show you a little bit of example of where the OR comes up in the god etymology. We've dealt with Horus a lot, and I reference here a picture of Horus as his aspect of being a bird, because the bird, the serpent, and the dragon inextricably linked, and we'll go on to deal with that a little bit more. But notice here the symbol of the resting cobra, which would be phonetically referenced as the D and J sound, the J sound. Anyway, Horus bird with the sun over here, as we've said already. The sun is inextricably linked with dragon symbolism. Horus, the Egyptian sun god, contains the root word or. And as always, we're referencing everything to do with the dragon in purple, because if you're born of the dragon, you're purple born, you're Porphyrogentius. And then the or root turns up in yet another interesting place that has to do with serpents and dragons, which is the oracle. And the most famous of the oracles is the Oracle of Delphi, who apparently sat on a tripod stool and would see things and tell the priests of the visions that she had. And the most famous oracle was named Pythia, much like the word python. Okay, now we're going to be dealing with Genesis and the Garden of Eden. Since we are in Genesis, that is what is there is the stories of the Garden of Eden. So let's have a little look at some of the stuff that comes up. Okay, famously enough, in the story of the Garden of Eden is obviously the tree, which is sacred. And trees are inextricably linked with dragons and serpents. And you see this tree symbol come up everywhere. You've got a dragon here and a serpent here, inextricably, alchemically linked. And I'll show you a few of them. But dragons, serpents, and trees are inextricably linked and allude to cult practice, a blood ritual sacrifice. And this is evidenced in the etymology and symbology, and this is where it gets funky. Okay, last week I showed you this one here, more dragon, serpent, tree symbolism. And this one is one that I took inside a Roman Catholic church in the city of Leiden, which is the home of the Bilderberg Group. Okay, and this is a dragon with its tail wrapped around a tree. Okay, and that's Mother Mary carrying a lily, and we'll cover that tonight, with a halo, as we've already just talked about. Sun and moon inextricably linked with chemical, pagan, pantheistic, disguised as monotheistic religious cult practice. Interesting to note, little dragon with his tail wrapped around the trees. All right, let's just pause a moment before we go on to make sure that everybody's understanding of the root word the. Sorry for those who covered this off, but just to refresh your memories. The root word, basically the means God. Theoi means gods. Check out the website theoi.com. I get lots of my pictures off there. Theotokos means offspring of the gods. Hemitheoi, half god, half mortal or human. Hemi as in hemisphere means half a sphere, so half god, half mortal. Therianthropy, shapeshift, the ability to change shape or metamorphose, and you have the orf root word, which is a serpent root word in the word metamorphose. Theophany, the ability to appear and disappear, and again, pair or peer root word, which is a serpent root word, and we'll deal with that a bit. Going back to the tree allegory, because we dealt with that before, obviously the tree ties into dragons, inextricably linked with serpents and dragons. So the tree comes from the the root words, and that is shown through its evolvement. Treasure was often seen as sacred knowledge in the Grecian mysteries, and the word thesaurus and treasure have similar letters to each other. We dealt with what thesaurus meant last week, obviously having the root word, okay, interesting, but it also has sauros, which has two roots in it. First, sauros is the Latin for lizard, and sau is the Semitic root word for light. Okay, and it also means, like, for example, Saudi Arabia actually takes its root from this, all right? And the word tree is obviously tied philologically and etymologically into these group rootings. Theatre also coming from this group rooting. We went through a huge amount of theatre etymology and symbolism in the first few episodes of Dragonology. Again, the being a dragon's god ruler root word, which is why it's normally found at the beginning of most sentences. And of course, this is evident in the interpretations and the meanings of the various references to cults, theology, theosophy, and thelema. Now, theosophy is obviously Madame Blavatsky's society that she started, but interesting to notice the Ophi root word in there as well. And Thelema was Aleister Crowley's cult. And we dealt with this as well last week, tying into nature, plant, green. The word plant is an etymological stem from the root word, dragon root word pala, which obviously ties into this triad of root words, pala, para, and pio, which we've dealt with plenty, and forms the root of the word palatine, also known as plantina, which gave the name Plantagenet. Geoffrey Plantagenet's bloodline is descended from Plantina, the sister of Melusine. I beg your pardon. Green, the word green, as you said, is rooted in gen. And of course, the pagan icon of the green man, which is basically just another representation of the dragon. And the green man turns up in many interesting places. You'll notice the green man iconography usually as something with an anthropomorphic face, but with leaves and flowers normally coming out of its mouth. And you'll notice here, leaves coming out the mouth. Okay, this is actually, I think this may be one from Canterbury Cathedral. And this one's from Rosslyn Chapel. You'll notice the leaves coming out here. Obviously, Rosslyn Chapel's very old, pre-discovery of America. Beautifully carved into the masonry there. Absolutely incredibly done. And here's another variation of the green man. You'll notice this one's kind of got horns, and this kind of shows how the green man is merged with Pan. Okay, we'll get into Pan in a second. Do you notice like leaves for the face? Pointed ears. And the green man is a throwback to the nature god, fertility, nature and sex, which is the god Pan, is very much inextricably linked with fertility, reproduction, sex, and all of that. This became very evident in the artwork, which kind of became represented with Pan. I'll go into the symbolism of the grape in a second, but Pan, much like Bacchus, which is the Roman god, and Dionysus being the Greek version of Bacchus, they were inextricably linked with grapes and harvest, and of course the ritual Theatre Dionysia, which came from them as well. But what you're looking at here is Pan's half goat. You'll notice cloven hooves, and there again with foliage around his head. A lot of this kind of thing goes on, which looks to be like a sexual advance that's unwanted, that comes into the territory of rape. But it's interesting to notice whenever you have these kind of scenes of sexual innuendo or rape going on, there's a lot of onlooking cherubs and angels, and they come up again and again in these kind of things, and it's quite disturbing. We'll go into this kind of theme and allegory and what this all means, because it's really all alluding to the same cult ritual practice of throwback to cult paganism and where it really, really started, and this sort of cultural influence which has come into existence, and it's been around for a very long time, but it's kept sort of beneath the surface of most people's perceptions. But it's there if you look at the art, and it is still very much happening. And we get to understand what a lot of the bizarre consequences of these pagan or cult practices actually are. Okay, we've dealt a lot with Pan. And this picture of him and the goat, blessed goat. But yeah, Pan, God, well, you can see with goat sort of lower bottoms, usually there's his phallus penetrating a goat. The goat seems to be pushing him away in a way. This doesn't look terribly consensual. But again, here, Pan chasing after somebody with an erect phallus, very much an indication of pillage and rape. And in fact, hymns to Pan very much talks about I render, I rip, I rape kind of wording. And of course, there's a lot of overt sexuality with regards to Pan. Now, what's interesting to notice is the grapevine hair in this being that's been, you can see Pan clutching at the clothes, tearing them off. Very lusty, very carnal. Okay, notice the horns over there of Pan. You can see it's Pan because of the cloven hooves, the goat-like hooves, but always with the horns, grape hair. But here we've got Pan, notice horns, cloven hooves, with a pan flute and a much younger youth. And this is what we're going to get into now, is this allegory of what would be loosely termed today as pedophilia. But pedophilia is actually, I think, the incorrect term for it, because I think pedophilia puts a sort of very soft tone on what it actually is, because anything like pediatrics refers to child, but philia means like. And if you like children, I don't think you do the kind of things that get done by pedophiles, what gets termed, or who get termed by pedophiles. I think there's a better term for it, and we'll get into it in a second, but we've obviously dealt a lot with allegory of fertility, reproductive sex. Fruit, the word fruit originally comes from the Latin word fructus, meaning enjoyment or satisfaction, carnal satisfaction, and is symbolically representative of fertility and reproduction. We get a lot of fruit allegory that ties into serpentine etymology, and we will get into that in a bit. For example, and we've dealt with this one last week, we get a bit more into the pear now as well. Pear word symbolism obviously originates from the Pala, Para, Pure group, dragon group triad, which, as we know, all comes from dragon etymology. The word apple is rooted in the Arabic word afa, which means viper. It's cognizant with the word viper, and apple and serpents always turn up in the Garden of Eden. And of course, viper is similar to vines, all right? And we've spoken about grapes. They turn up with Pan, they turn up with Bacchus. They represent the bloodline. And of course, red wine is representative of blood in cult rituals, which is why we have the Eucharist in church, where we take the bread and the wine. It's symbolic of drinking blood. And the Grail, obviously, which is the most famous chalice containing blood, contained the blood of Christ, caught his blood at his crucifixion. And of course, what is a crucifixion but a sacrifice? So again, a ritual. And you take red wine at the Eucharistic rituals, which are obviously associated with wine and blood drinking. And all of this is representation of Holy Royal Dragon bloodline. That's what the Holy Grail is representative of. That's what the grapevines are representative of, which is why you often find grapevines wrapped around columns in carved columns and artworks. Now, the lily flower, obviously, the picture we spoke about earlier that I took in the Catholic Cathedral in Leiden showed a Virgin Mother Goddess, Mary, or that's the Christian name of her. She's taken on many incarnations over time, but holding a lily. And again, not by accident. The lily has some very interesting undertones to it. Firstly, the lily of the fleur de lis, lis of fleur de lis, obviously means lily, fleur, flower of the lily. The symbol of the fleur de lis, which is a stylized, iconized, symbolic representation, very famous, is a symbol of the Merovingian or Merovii bloodline. We've spoken about the etymology of the Merovingian bloodline, and I can take you through it again, just so you understand. Let's break the first one down. Mer. Mer, obviously, being the first word of mermaid, and me, M-E, which is the first few letters of Melusine, and we've dealt with them. Melusine obviously came from the Merovingian bloodline. And in the term Merovii, what you're missing from the VEE is the R in between, and that represents the De Vere bloodline. Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, who actually was the real writer of the works that became known under the body of works written by William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare was illiterate. It was clearly written by someone who was very highly initiated and could write an iambic pentameter and understood a lot of symbolic allegory, because the supposed Shakespearean works are thick with dragon symbolism and allegory in the words, and that's clearly from somebody who knew what they were talking about. It could only be a royal. Written in the 16th century, very few people had those kind of skills. You had to be either very rich, educated by the Jesuits, or a royal with amazing tutorage to be able to write like that. So that's probably who wrote, was a member of the Merovingian bloodline. Okay, so what is the other thing that's interesting over here? They use the word Gien, okay, which actually we spoke about John and Saint John. This is in Italian. If they were to talk about Johnny, they would Gianni, okay? It would be Gianni rather than Johnny. They don't use the word J. Gian is actually a reference to John. So St. John, we dealt with St. John. St. John's normally always depicted with a grail cup with blood and the serpents on it. And also the Knights of St. John and Johannism, which is a dragon cultic practice, which is practiced by the Knights of Malta, in fact, most knightly orders. Now, of course, the lily is also the sign of Lilith, and Lilith is very interesting because the lit root word turns up in Lilith, as we spoke about earlier, light and lit. And Lilith, very interesting. Let's read a bit here. Lilith is a Hebrew name for a figure in Jewish mythology developed earliest in the Babylonian Talmud, who is generally thought to be part derived from a historical earlier class of female dragon found in Mesopotamian religion, written in the cuneiform texts of Sumer, Akkad, Assyria, and Babylonia. In the book known as the Alphabet of Ben Sira, Lilith becomes Adam's first wife, as she was created at the same time and of the same earth as Adam. This contrasts with Eve, who was said to be made from Adam's rib. Lilith left Adam after she refused to become subservient to him and would not return to the Garden of Eden after she coupled with the archangel Samael. Interesting. And this depiction of Lilith with red hair, very interesting. That we'll get into that at some stage. But again, the serpent wrapped around the body, and we'll get into that a little bit more as well. Again, as I mentioned, in Lilith, you have the LIT root. LIT, the common root lit, is found in Lilith, literature, enlighten, light. Light, obviously, from here, light, we go into Lucifer, because Lucifer originates in Lux sphere, which quite literally means the light bringer, okay? And this is then we go back into the tree, plant, apple, pear etymology, because it brings us back to this. Why the groves? All right. All of that is rooted in the etymology connection between this word here, Lucas, and Lucifer. Lucas, the word Lucas in this context is the Latin word which references a grove or wood sacred to a deity, a place where people engage in sacred worship, which is why you often find these kind of things in sacred forests, which are the henges with stone circles, or sometimes there were even wooden henges. But this thing is really, the word Lucas is actually commonly found as well in a lot of the stories relating to the gods written by Roman authors and Greek authors, etc. So again, this word Lucas is a Latin word that references a sacred grove or wood. Now, grove normally would be a place where ritual sacrifices took place to the gods or in homage of the gods or the deities or the dragons. It was blood ritual sacrifices inextricably linked to the dragons. Okay, now Bohemian Grove. For those of you who have looked at this information, and this should not be anything particularly new to you, but we talk about the grove. The word grove is very close to the word grave, and that's not by accident, but this word loosely translates into sacred grove or wood. And this is, for me, the most, when I think of sacred grove where, cult ritual worship takes place, this is the first thing that jumps into my mind is Bohemian Grove. It's become synonymous with this sort of idea. And of course, I've pulled out some really interesting earlier pictures here of Bohemian Grove where you can see gatherings of peoples. That would obviously perhaps be a bonfire in the middle where a sacrifice would take place. The tables where they would be feasting. Obviously, feasting is very much a part of cult ritual celebration. Notice massive redwood forests, massive trees around them, because that's where they are, the redwood forests of San Francisco, Northern California. And again, here you can see all the trees around here and some kind of what looks like something similar to a mast, but here you've got some little wings on. Very interesting. By the way, they actually do have a Catholic pagan saint, St. John of Nepomuk, which is the pagan saint of Bohemian Grove, which is often depicted with his finger on his lips like this because keeping a secret or being discreet clearly about what goes on in here. And the owl, inextricably linked with the mother goddess and nature and ritual worship, comes up in the worship of Athena. You find owls on the Athenian coins. And, of course, the owl, or what they say is a representation of Moloch, turns up at Bohemian Grove as well. And here's some more kind of rituals or ceremonies or initiations going on in the Bohemian Grove. Now, rituals and ceremonies are interesting because they come in many different guises, many different aspects, but ultimately it's all about maximizing and manipulating energetics, perhaps spirits from the other side, to enhance one's own being, life, whatever. Many reasons for it, but the Black Mass typically is normally performed over a naked body, and this is shows you a priest killing a baby, and they would kill this baby, typically drain the blood into the cup which sits on the body of a naked woman, presumably a high priestess. You can see this kind of thing. Look at the costumes. This kind of thing's been going on for a very long time. This is just something that's popped out of nowhere. This thing is as old as religion itself. And here's some various other interesting interpretations of these black masses that used to take place because, again, the same kind of imagery turns up. The cup over the woman. Now, you would often have the priest engaged in coitus with the naked woman, because that would be the reason for the naked woman hanging over the edge there. You can see the priest's naked Jew. But there is a dead baby, clearly over here, being held by another naked woman. This is also typically the kind of thing that would be going on as anal sex as well. It's very much a ritual thing. And we'll get into why in another Dragonology episode. But again, here, another representation of the same thing, the cup where the blood would go into on a naked body. Various different interpretations of the Black Mass, which, show different time periods of this kind of thing going on as well. So this thing has been going on for a long time. Okay, now let's talk about the nakedness. Why the nakedness? And nakedness is inextricably linked with the dragons and the serpents. And if you look at a lot of classical art, how they hide the allegory of dragons and serpents is in your face, right, through the nudity. That's why so much nudity. It's to represent the serpent and the dragons, and they do it right in front of you.
okay? For example, naked serpents in Genesis chapter 2, verse 25. Adam and Eve are both quoted as being naked, both naked and felt no shame. Nudity and serpents are inextricably linked through a thematic allegory as demonstrated in the Garden of Eden. And here we go, the etymological links between nudity and serpent, allegorical association is illustrated by the words of several languages and expressions. So let's go through them. For example, afa, which we've spoken about, which means viper or serpent, is cognizant with the word kafa, which means naked, okay, in the Arabic languages. Nagna, meaning naked, okay, is cognizant with the word naga, which is a serpent deity or king. And then, of course, the most obvious in the English language is the word snake, which is very similar to the word naked. In fact, if you put a D over there, it would say snaked. Think about it. All you'd have to do is put an S over there for it to say snaked, right? Naked. That's actually like 4 letters in there are the same. In fact, the NA is cognizant with naga, and that's the root of snake, NA, okay? We've dealt with naga previously in previous Dragonology episodes. Okay. And I love to get into a little bit of fairy tale and, stories, and particularly about, royalty. And there's so much allegory and symbolism that comes out when you start talking about fairy tales to do with royalty and fairies and whatnot. This one in particular is no exception. Think about this. A fairy tale about an emperor that has no clothes. What is that all about? And again, it's just symbolic of, the naked royal is symbolic allegory of the dragon bloodline. Again, referencing the fact that they're snaked, they're naked, they're snake, they're serpent, they're dragon. Get it? This is what it's referencing. So that's what the story of the emperor has no clothes is really referencing. It's an allegorical representation. And if you remember, the story goes that everybody cheers him on and says nothing, and then one of the little boys says to him, "But you got no clothes on." And what this is allegorical of is how the whole of the world's population are, for example, support the British royals or support the royal family or support the idea that there is even royalty and that they live in palaces and that we, the taxpayers pay their salaries. And most people put unquestionable amounts of faith into the royalty, and, they're good for tourism and their palaces bring people through and blah, 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 whatever. Well, that's what a lot of people think, because you see them when they have these big ceremonies and royal weddings, people waving flags in the streets. But what that little kid represents is the eyes of those who aren't jaded with corruption, aren't jaded with the brainwashing, the clean eyes of the supposedly those who can look at something without a jaded perspective and see it for what it is, and be bold enough to speak out about that thing, which most people would perhaps paper over the cracks, point out what that thing really is. It's that little boy pointed out, no, the king has no clothes on. Yeah, actually, let's point out what is really wrong with the royals, the fact that they, uphold a hierarchy which enslaves the majority of humanity. And they don't do particularly pleasant things, engage in war for profits. And from what I hear, kidnapping children, drink blood, and some of them supposedly are dragons that shapeshift and eat these children, So that's what that little kid represents, is pointing out what is true and what is real, okay? And for me, these are the facts that are real, that come up again and again in the allegory that we deal with, and themes and symbolisms, in the language, in the artwork, hell, carved into marble for that matter. Okay. Genesis 3:13, the King James Version says, "And the Lord God said unto the woman, What what is this that thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. Now, what did she eat? The fruit, and we've dealt with the fruit already, okay? Talking about lust and carnal satisfaction. So what does the word beguiled mean? Beguiled, in Hebrew, the word beguile is translated into Ishiani. Okay, Ishiani can also be read as he put his seed in me. The word initiate or initiation stems from Ishiani. Okay. This is interesting because we start getting onto this whole, well, I'll just go on and read. Genesis 6, 1 to 14. Okay, Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 14 says, when men began to increase on earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. Okay. So this is talking about the interbreeding of dragons and humans to create the kings and rulers and royalty of today, which became the heroes of the stories of ancient Greece and Rome, and men of renown, the kings, which became the kings and the rulers and the royalty, royal bloodlines of today. So let's go on and look a little bit more at this and how this allegory is played out in other sources. The theme of rape, which we've already slightly touched on, but which we'll get into much further, the relationship between the dragon and the human intercourse, sexual intercourse, is recorded in the lexicon of rape and reptile. All right, let's go on to explore this even further. I must just point out this. I use this picture a lot, this Giulio Romano representation from 1450 of Jupiter raping Olympia. Okay, that does not look like this woman is like wanting what's coming her way. Interesting to note, always turning up with Jupiter and Zeus as the symbol of the eagle, the bird allegory, dragon symbolism, very inextricably and closely linked. Notice the thunderbolts here as well. But basically, I love this one because this one clearly shows the serpent metamorphosing tail. Now this does look a little bit like Lilith, but yeah, the raping reptile. This theme is so common, and in the Roman language, rapier means rapist, and repair means reptile. So you can see how close rapier and repair are to each other. And pair, actually, this P-E-R-E root is the root that comes with the para, pio root, and that turns up here in this Roman root of the word repair. And think of, for example, we've spoken about dinosaurs, sauros, in the word thesauros, which means lizard. Think of, for example, the dinosaur called a raptor. Okay, that would come from this root, repair, which is the reptile, raptor, which is just a flying reptile, dragons, dinosaur, bird, really, lizard, a flying lizard, not like a dragon. Okay, so really what this King James version of the Bible talks about when Eve said, the serpent beguiled me, Eve was possibly saying the serpent, that she was seduced by the serpent. And William Blake's artwork, very interesting guy, this William Blake, and he's one of the romantic poets that I sincerely suggest you go back and read because there's a lot of mystery school allegory in his works. But in his paintings, look at this. You think of beguiled, the serpent put a seed in me, and that's the apple. That's the serpent feeding her the apple. So again, fruit could have the seeds in them, okay? But look at this one again of the serpent wrapping itself around Eve. Okay, she's got a hand on the apple there. That's interesting. both of this representation in the Garden of Eden by William Blake. So the pairing of dragon and human. There is often a heavy and fatal condition to any pairing of human and dragon. And we've dealt with this a lot in previous stories and fairy tale. We've carved this off in the situation of Aragorn and Arwen in Lord of the Rings, which comes up again and again. Lord of the Rings is just everywhere when you're talking about dragonology. We carved this off in the story of Splash, the story of Shrek, the story of Beowulf, the story of Ladyhawke, the Princess and the Frog. This whole theme of the pairing of human and dragon, or fae and mortal, or the gods and the mortals is just ongoing. It comes up absolutely everywhere. So, apart from that biblical source of the sons of the god came unto the daughters of men and had children, there's a lot of other sources of this history which comes up in artwork, and the impregnating of humans by the dragons, humans being raped by dragons, raping and impregnating them. Here we got the rape, talk about the various they love this theme. The artists just love reinterpreting this theme over and over again, which was the seeding of the dragon race into the human angelic bloodlines. So this is the rape of Persephone that's being represented in this incredible artwork here. Zeus raping Persephone. You can tell it's Zeus by the crown, which looks like a sun. Zeus was a sun god like all the other gods. And then the rape of Europa. Again, like I said, very disturbing. You find these cherubs, these little, baby angels, always somehow involved in these scenes which depict the rape of somebody. And it's very, and makes me feel a bit icky and uncomfortable, but there's a reason for it. It's, again, thematic, symbolic allegory. We will talk about this, what it actually is referring to. And when you look at, cute little cherubs, no, you'll never look at cherubs like that again. But again, notice all the nudity, legs spread here, the rape of Europa on a bull. Here again, Europa on a bull with the cherubs coming towards her. Now, we're talking a lot about the connection between the bird and serpent, and I'm just going to cover this off again for those who are unaware. In the Roman language, the analogy between bird and serpent, or bird and dragon, is encoded into the philological relationship between Coluba or Colubra, which means serpent or snake, and Columba, meaning dove. So Coluba or Colubra, meaning serpent or snake, and Columba, meaning dove. Columba, Coluba, very similar. They've got the Colu root, which would be the root of Columbus, Columbia, column, Colu, column. We've covered that root quite a bit in previous dragonology episodes. So just that is, again, where the dragon or the bird and the serpent, dragon and the bird allegory come into effect. And you've got the eagles, you've got the doves, you've got here, for example, this is a depiction of the basilisk, which often takes on cockatrice-like features. And the reason I mention this is because it's important to understand. For example, you'd see this beautiful painting and think, that's kind of sweet little birdie and, a little bit interesting. Have a look here. He's having a nibble on this woman's breast. And this is actually, if you look at what this painting is called, it's called Zeus Raping Leda. Now, for people who didn't know the symbolic allegory of what the bird actually represents, they wouldn't understand that it's representing a dragon raping a woman. Okay, and Zeus or Jupiter are often depicted in bird-like countenances such as swans or eagles. That's why the Roman eagle is representative of Zeus or Jupiter. Again, other representations of the rape of Leda. This is, for me, a little bit more. Legs spread, you can actually see the genitals, a female genital, very clearly here, and very I beg your pardon. Let's go back to that. Very much the swan looking directly there. I think is very interesting to paint, a very naughty picture. But this one here, black swan, interesting to notice, okay? Black swans are always representative of the dragon. But look at this, little hatching from eggs, interesting, little babies, which would, again, be representative. Mithra came from the cosmic egg, as did Phanes. So it's all symbolically allegorical of the same thing, dragon bloodline. And of course, this is interesting. Jupiter rapes Semele. This is what this artwork is called. You can tell it's Jupiter by the thunderbolts. Jupiter and Zeus are commonly depicted with thunderbolts in their hands. And you can see Semele clearly not happy with what's going on here. And the Jupiter-Semele theme comes up quite a lot. This is a depiction, again, William Blake, depiction of, I beg your pardon, this is Gustave Dora. And you'll see here, again, Semele on the lap of Jupiter, but a little angel over here. And here we've got a depiction of Diana and the Nymphs Surprised by the Fawns by Peter Paul Rubens, who, by the way, highly initiated artist, served in many courts of the royals. He's one of those, much like Lucas Cranach, and perhaps sometime I'll cover him off too. But these are non-humans. These look like like fawns, because they have the goat-like bottoms, hairy goat-like bottoms, cloven hooves, and the horns. And you can see women very much being taken by force. Diana and the nymphs surprised by the fawns. Basically what he's saying is this is the rape of Diana and the nymphs. Very famous painting, Rape of the Daughters of Leucippus. For whatever reason, artists are ever so obsessed with painting rape, but what they are in fact representing is the seeding of the angelic dragon bloodlines into the human race, which is a momentous thing for kings and queens who would commission these great artists to paint these things, because what they are representing is the genesis or the birthplace or the origins of the kings and queens and royals and sort of high priests that now control our world and all shapeshift and all drink blood and all eat babies and children and cause untold havoc on our planet. Just to read here, this painting by Peter Paul Rubens again depicts the mortal Castor and the immortal Pollux, okay, abducting Phoebe and Hilaria, daughters of Leucippus, and basically it just shows Castor, the horse tamer, is recognizable from his armor, so this would be Castor, whilst Pollux, the boxer, is shown with a bare upper body free and also distinguishable by their horses, because Castor is well behaved and supported by Pewter, which is a baby, again, little baby cherub, involved again in the rapes. Notice the black wings though, okay. It says here, Pewter's wings are black. Now this gets interesting, because this is some Greek artwork we found of Zeus raping Ganymede. Now Ganymede is a man, or was a little boy, okay? This gets into controversial territory, and what you can see what Ganymede's doing here is giving a hand job or an oral batu, fellatio to the phallus on this side, but you can quite clearly see Zeus's phallus entering Ganymede's anal orifice over here, Ganymede being a man. And this is artwork, this is actual Greek artwork. Now, Ganymede over here is actually a much, you can see Zeus represented with a beard, representing an older man, younger men are represented without beards in artwork. Here we go. represented with a beard, the younger boy represented without the beard. Notice the lamps, again, representative of light, but this is where we get into the area of paiderastia or pederasty, okay, which is known as an erotic homosexual relationship between an adult male and a pubescent boy, which is a common part of Athenian and Roman culture. Pederastic rituals were considered a rite of passage and an honor to the god Zeus, okay, as indicated by the artwork. And again, you can tell it's Zeus because of the eagle and the thunderbolts, but more specifically, okay, you can tell the honor of the god Zeus was a lot about sodomy, young children, and the priests in the, we'll get onto that. Another depiction here of the rape of Ganymede by Zeus, okay, Zeus being the eagle, and Ganymede here being depicted as a child, all right? Zeus and Jupiter obviously symbolically represent as the eagle. We showed you the philological relationship between serpent and bird earlier, and how closely that symbolic allegory is related. So once you understand that, this picture becomes a lot more sinister. And you can actually see this kid peeing out of fear. There's a stream of urine coming down there. That face, not happy at all. Yeah, not good. But looks to be clutching, okay, grapes, representative of the bloodline. Now, Roman artwork known as the Warren Cup, demonstrating pederasty. Okay, older man, younger boy. This is a very common thing. It wasn't hidden. They put it on their artworks. Okay, this is a very famous artwork. So this is one side of this Warren Cup. This is the other side. So this is anal sex going on here. Very clear what's going on there. So pederastic practice is very, very common and depicted in artworks all over the show. Okay. Here, older man, younger boy. You can clearly see a much smaller male figure than this one. And this is actually a younger boy bringing gifts for the older lover. Here again, same thing, bringing gifts for the older lover. Look at this. Now, we've looked a lot at cherubs and angels and whatnot and kind of had to wonder, what is that all about? Because there are representative of dragons having the wings and whatnot, but why in the childlike countenance? Now, the childlike countenances, when you see little babies and cherubs and children carved into various aspects of churches and whatnot, what they are representing is pederasty, okay? This is illustrated in this painting here. Pederastic idealism illustrated or expressed in this artwork called Amor Vincit Omnia, which means love conquers all, by Caravaggio. Okay, and basically this painting is often interpreted as the idealistic expression of pederastic love. And you can see the full frontal phallus there. Now, I've just included a few more representations of Zeus abducting or raping Ganymede, okay? I found some more artworks, and I thought they were worth talking about because there's a few interesting things to turn up here. So here, obviously, Zeus as a eagle. And what is interesting to see here is a marble carving of Ganymede here wearing a Phrygian cap. And we've dealt with a Phrygian cap before. This painting is called The Induction of Ganymede into Mount Olympus. Okay, so induction, initiation, ritual. We've spoken about Ishiani, which is another word for hypotosedemy, also being the word of initiation, the root of initiation or induction. So Ganymede, as a little child boy that he was kidnapped and taken to Mount Olympus and presumably raped or whatever. Lots of little cherubs around again. Notice they turn up whenever there's rape or ritual or all sorts going on. Yeah, the induction of Ganymede into Mount Olympus after he was abducted by Zeus in his various expressions. Here, for example, abducted by Zeus in the clouds. This is actually a depiction of Zeus raping Ganymede. So this is what actually happened. Okay, ended up on Mount Olympus with all the other gods and Zeus, no doubt, being sodomized. And, well, ritual orgies are part of the whole homage and energetic attention-paying, praise, worship, whatever you want to call it, which, I mean, again, very much a part of Roman and Athenian and old ancient Greek culture, part of pantheistic ritual. And much like literature and art and all that kind of thing was sucked out of circulation by the Roman Catholic Church, this kind of thing was sucked out of circulation to public. It wasn't sort of commonly done in public. And in fact, they started getting very moral, and this thing became, this sort of stuff became known and became not so socially acceptable. But going on behind closed doors, trust me, there are plenty of, let's say, non-religious orgies which happen, but orgies are very much a part of what goes on in the behind closed doors amongst the priests in the Vatican. Is this the gay mafia within the Vatican? This is all homage to the gods, the dragons, this kind of ritual orgy that goes on. In fact, the OR root word of orgy references the fact that this activity is a reference to the dragon. And the fact that this stuff is still going on, pederasty and homosexuality in the priesthood, is evident in the law known as Crimin's Solicitationis, which references the practice of priests having sexual relations with young children is considered a rite of passage and part of the occult indulgences and ritualistic practices engaged in as part of the privilege of being part of the church or the clergy or the initiated, Ishiani, the inducted. The sexual abuse of children, I beg your pardon for the spelling, the sexual abuse of children is sanctioned under church law, under what is known as Crimin's Solicitationis, which demands that all priests cover up the crimes of other child-raping priests or face excommunication. So, for example, if I was a priest and my colleague, the priest, is raping another child, I'm not allowed to do anything about it. I'm not allowed to call the police. I'm not allowed to do anything. And if I do, I would get excommunicated from the church, lose my job and never be able to work as a priest again. So, that is the kind of pressure that's put on to other members of the clergy. Even if they don't want to engage in this kind of activity, it is sanctioned by the church. And pressure is put upon other clergy members to maintain this practice. Sick, really. So there is a theme of ritual erotica, which is pervasive throughout occult ritual practices, and the evidence of this is demonstrated all over the artworks that turn up in homage to the gods. And of course, Eyes Wide Shut did a very good job of representing the orgiastic ritual practice that is engaged in by the elites. Do go watch that film if you haven't seen it already. I have recommended it before. And as we've spoken about previously, the word ejaculate is rooted in the Latin word eaculus, meaning serpent. okay, Eaculus, has the Kulu root. Like Kolu, Kulu, Kula, it's all the same serpent root. Eaculus, meaning serpent, is the Latin word which is the root of ejaculate. And of course, we've done this before as well, but this all ties in. You talk about an immaculate conception. We ask, is Jesus of the dragon bloodline? Yes, because he was of an immaculate conception. The word immaculate is rooted in the Latin word eaculus, which of course means serpent. Again, the Kulu root, which is the dragon root word, evident in eaculus. The Roman word rapere, to pillage or rape, okay, evolved from the earlier Roman word rapere, meaning reptile, as we've already covered off. Okay, so understand the philological relationship between reptile and rape. Okay, it's from the Latin representations of the words. Rapere evolved into para, and that, of course, with the pere, which is the para pure root over there. And of course, the Roman word rapere is etymologically cognizant with the reaper, and this takes us into the Grim Reaper territory. And with that, we get into sort of like the astral realms and stuff, but I'm going to leave that for a couple of Dragonology episodes into the future, because we've still got a few steps to cover off before we get there. But yes, the Grim Reaper is very much, again, dragon allegory. So that's it for tonight, folks. The end of Dragonology episode 9. If anybody is interested in learning more about dragons and Dragonology, we are trying to publish the Encyclopedia of Dragons. So that is a project that we are currently working on. It is pretty much complete, but keeps growing with each bit of research that I do. So please feel free to contribute to this project. The next episode of Dragonology is on the 28th of May, 2015, and that'll be episode 10, which features well, let's say a trot around the world, looking at universal Dragonology. We will be visiting lots of different cultures and comparing cultural mythologies to each other and taking an in-depth look at specific cultures and the cultural mythology or Dragonology that identifies their specific cultural history and identity. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode of Dragonology and you have missed it, feel free to pick up a high-definition download from effiemarket.com. All of our episodes of Dragonology, and in fact, all the episodes of all broadcasts on Conscious Consumer Network are now available in high-definition downloads from effiemarket.com. And as always, we thank you for supporting free and independent media. Feel free to go, obviously, onto our homepage to the big red heart and donate there to support us. And we have our website, of course, website address being consciousconsumernetwork.tv. And the red heart, as I said, is on the homepage there. We really do need your help, guys, to keep Conscious Consumer Network going, and obviously to keep it free of corporate sponsorship and advertising, which ultimately does put the control smack in the hands of the people. And we will never let this network be compromised. We'd rather stop doing it than let it be compromised. But of course, we don't want to. We really need your help. Please support free and independent media by becoming a monthly pledger at effiemarket.com. That's €10 a month. And you then get access to all the high definition downloads that we have available. That is basically a back catalogue of all the CCN broadcasts that we've done since the 1st of January 2015 when we launched. All right, guys, that's it for me tonight. Join me next week for episode 10 of Dragonology. Until then, I've been Mel V. Have a very good evening.
If you really had to make a difference on a large scale with minimal resources, how would you go about it? Have you ever dared to dream of doing that which seems impossible? On a planet steeped with corruption and destruction, the question beckons, How do we change it? Media has a far-reaching impact on people and has been used to manipulate humanity into our current destructive patterns. In order to affect people into moving into constructive patterns of behavior, we need to construct a new paradigm of media. Conscious Consumer Network has been created with the explicit intention of giving the amazing truth-seeking, solutions-orientated, alternative media a place to fully realize their true potential, with a cutting-edge, high-tech professional media platform being made available to use at no cost to the broadcaster. In turn, some of the greatest freedom-seeking hearts and souls of our time have realized the true potential of what has been created and have come together to provide their insight and inspiration on CCN. Conscious Consumer Network has become a unique, interactive information and educational network which provides a free-to-view, live-stream, ultra-high-definition channel to the world and features 25 live shows a week and growing with the addition of multiple language broadcasts. CCN has features comparable with mainstream media, such as being able to pause and rewind broadcasts whilst being live streamed. Catch up on missed or previous broadcasts, now available from CCN High Definition Downloads. You can now purchase a high definition download of your favorite CCN show from ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a monthly pledger. This can be done with a monthly pledge of €10, which will allow you unlimited access to CCN's high-definition downloads, which hosts a back catalogue of over 250 shows which have been aired since the launch of CCN on the 1st of January 2015. In order to keep CCN free of corporate sponsorship and advertising, CCN has launched the Pledge 300 campaign. This is a realistic goal with the hopes of securing a minimum of 300 people who will each pledge €10 a month. With this number, we can continue to grow and operate and potentially expand into a second foreign language channel. Without it, CCN will simply not be able to function without succumbing to corporate sponsorship and advertising. Help keep alternative media in the hands of the people. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.